The driver you bought last spring still sits in your bag, and you already know the truth that nobody at the pro shop will say out loud. It didn't give you the 10 extra yards you paid for. That hollow feeling isn't your imagination. The problem was never the head, and it was never your age. The shaft is the engine, and most senior golfers have been handed a mismatched one for years without ever being told why the distance quietly disappeared. Here's the counterintuitive part. A shaft that weighs 50 grams instead of 70 can add real yards for a golfer swinging at 75 miles per hour, while a brand new driver head with a stock stiff shaft will keep costing you money and keep falling short. The industry buries this under glossy marketing because a shaft is harder to sell at a premium than a polished titanium face. So you keep chasing the next head and the real fix stays on the rack, unremarkable, a fraction of the price. By the end of this, you will know 3 shaft profiles worth testing before you spend $1 more on a driver. These are the forgotten principles, the ones that fit your swing speed, your tempo, and your budget in ways the big brands never mention in the commercial. If you have ever paid $500 for a driver and felt the same weak fade on the first swing, you know that quiet pinch of disappointment. That is the moment this video is about. Not the swing, not the course, not your timing. The shaft in your hands is delivering the wrong message to the ball, and you have been blaming yourself instead. The first profile that most senior golfers should test is the lightweight high launch shaft, typically in that 40 to 60 gram range that fitters keep recommending. Weight matters because a lighter shaft lets you generate more club head speed without swinging harder. Think of it this way. Every gram you remove from the shaft is a gram your body doesn't have to rush to catch up with. For a swing speed that has slowed from 90 to 75, dropping 15 grams off the shaft can feel like turning off a headwind. That single fact, that a lighter shaft can feel like turning off a headwind, is something the club manufacturers would rather you never focused on. Subscribe and I'll walk you through the 3 shaft profiles that most weekend golfers never get told about. In the comments, write Dead Money. Everything we expose on this channel is in the Dead Money Golf ebook. 120 pages, $47. Link below. If you've ever been sold a driver by a fitter who only asked about your swing speed, the flex matters just as much. Senior flex is often labeled with the letter A, sometimes R2, and some brands use their own codes entirely. Stiff is not a badge of honor. Stiff is a gate that keeps your ball in the air too low and too short. If you have been chasing senior status by refusing to soften your shaft, you have been fighting your own equipment for years. The high launch design does exactly what the name promises. It puts the ball up quickly and keeps it climbing. For a golfer who once carried the ball 240 yards and now struggles to reach 200, launch angle is the missing ingredient. The shaft flexes more through the hitting area, loading and unloading at the right moment, and the result is a trajectory you haven't seen since your 40s. Now, here's the financial part that makes this profile so attractive. A quality lightweight shaft can be installed for a couple $100, sometimes less than the cost of a single session at a big box fitting studio. Meanwhile, the driver you are about to buy would run you $600 and still come with a stock shaft that might not fit you at all. This is the first contradiction. The cheaper option, the reshaft, is the one that actually delivers. Sensory detail tells the story here. When you hit a lightweight shaft that matches your tempo, the club feels alive in your hands, almost as if it is doing the work for you. The impact sounds different, crisper, more solid, a click instead of a dead thud. Your mishits become less punishing because the shaft is forgiving your timing errors rather than exposing them. That is the feeling of the right profile. But there is a second profile, and this one works for the opposite problem. If you have ever watched your ball start straight and then drift right, curving away from the fairway like it had somewhere else to be, this is the one that changes everything. The second shaft profile is the counterbalanced higher torque design, built for golfers who fight a slice. Torque is the shaft's resistance to twisting during the swing. Higher torque lets the shaft twist more, which can help square the face at impact for a smoother tempo. For years, the industry told you that the only fix for a slice was lessons, or a new driver head with draw bias, or simply accepting the rough on every right side of the course. The slice is often a timing problem, not a face angle problem. A shaft that twists slightly more gives your hands a fraction more time to release the club head. The kick point, the place where the shaft bends most during the swing, changes where the ball launches and how much it spins. A higher kick point lowers the ball flight and tames the spin that sends your shot skidding sideways. The industry spends millions convincing you that the fix for a slice lives in the driver head. But the truth we just walked through sits in the shaft. A timing solution, not a face angle gimmick. Subscribe if you want to stay ahead of these hidden realities, because every myth we dismantle on this channel directly lowers your score and your spending. In the comments, write Dead Money. Everything we expose on this channel is in the Dead Money Golf ebook. 120 pages, $47. Link below. If you've ever been sold a driver based on head promises, while the real answer was in a shaft profile you never heard about, spin is the invisible tax on your distance. Every extra revolution of side spin costs you yards, not just in carry, but in roll, because the ball lands with less forward energy. A shaft that reduces that spin rate and tightens your dispersion does something no head design can match. It makes your misses smaller, which means more fairways, which means lower scores, which means fewer lost balls. And here is where the money really compounds. A lost ball costs $4. A sleeve of 3 premium balls costs $18. If your slice sends 2 balls into the trees every round, that is $8 gone before you even reach the turn. Multiply that across 20 rounds a season and you have quietly spent over $150 paying for a problem your current shaft is helping to create. The counterbalanced design adds weight near the grip, which changes the balance point of the whole club. This does something subtle but powerful. It makes the club head feel lighter during the swing, so you can feel the head release more naturally. For a senior golfer whose hands used to be quick and now need a fraction more time, this profile can feel like a time machine. Reshafting your current driver with a counterbalanced profile costs a fraction of a new purchase. The head you already own, the one you were ready to trade in for $60 of credit, is likely perfectly good. The shaft was the leak. This is the second contradiction. The fix you never considered is cheaper than the fix you almost bought. Sensory texture matters here too. With the right torque and counterbalance, the club no longer fights you through impact. The shaft twists, releases, and the ball leaves the face on a line you actually intended. The fairway in front of you stops feeling like a narrow ribbon and starts feeling like a runway. That is what a matched profile does, but there is a third profile, and this one is for the golfer who has given up on distance entirely, the one who says, "I just want to be consistent." This is the one most seniors have never been shown. The third shaft profile is the mid-weight, mid-flex design with an active tip, built for control without sacrificing the yards you have left. This is not about maximum speed. This is about repeatable feel, the kind of consistency that lets you stand over a shot and know, before you swing, where the ball is going to land. The active tip is the key. The tip section of the shaft bends and releases closer to the club head, which gives you feedback through your hands. You can feel the club loading during the downswing and unloading exactly at impact. For a golfer who has lost the fine motor timing of youth, this tactile feedback is worth more than any raw speed. This profile sits in a middle ground the industry rarely advertises. It is not the lightweight high-launch shaft that maximizes carry, and it is not the counterbalanced slice fighter. It is the shaft for the golfer who wants to play the same shot over and over, who values the fairway more than the bragging rights of a flushed 3-wood from the rough. Consider the player using a driver from years ago, the one with a worn grip and a stock shaft that was never fitted. Swapping in a mid-weight shaft with an active tip without touching the head often produces the single biggest improvement in a round. The golfer doesn't suddenly hit it 40 yards farther. But the misses shrink, the confidence grows, and the game becomes enjoyable again. That confidence has a financial payoff. When you trust your driver, you stop reaching for the hybrid on every tight hole. You stop buying replacement balls out of the vending machine. You stop booking expensive lessons to fix a swing that was never broken. The shaft was the mismatch all along. The system wants you to think you need a new swing or a new attitude. The truth is simpler. The pattern running through all three profiles is the one the industry never puts on the packaging. Distance and accuracy are not in the head, and they are not in your age. They are in the shaft, specifically in the weight, the flex, the torque, and the kick point that match your current swing speed and tempo. That is the forgotten principle this entire category of spending is built to hide. That shaft principle is the real difference between bleeding cash on the course and playing with confidence. Subscribe so you never miss the next hidden lever the golf industry keeps off the packaging. In the comments, write Dead Money. Everything we expose on this channel is in the Dead Money Golf ebook, 120 pages, 47,000. Link below. If you've ever been sold a club by the head and later realized the shaft was the only thing that mattered. Swing speeds in the 70 to 85 miles per hour range, typical for many senior golfers, need different equipment than the professional tour builds its marketing around. The pros swing at 110, maybe faster, and the shafts they use punish a slower tempo. When you buy the same brand that the tour player's name is on, you are buying a profile that may work against you from the first tee. The fitting guides all point in the same direction. Lighter weight in the 40 to 60 gram range. Senior or regular flex, mid to high launch characteristics. These are not subjective opinions. They are the consensus of the people who actually measure ball flight for a living. The contradiction is that the industry spends millions telling you to buy the head, while the fitting community quietly agrees that the shaft is where the performance lives. Here is what to do with this. A 3-step plan that costs almost nothing but a bit of time. First, find a fitter who will let you try the lightweight high launch profile with your own driver head. Second, borrow a counterbalanced shaft for a session and watch what your dispersion does on the range. Third, test the Midweight active tip option on your home course, where you know exactly what fairway position feels like. Each test gives you data your wallet can understand. Measure the yardage, count the fairways hit, notice what your miss does. After a few sessions, the right profile will announce itself with that crisp contact sound and the ball flight you remember from your best years. That is the moment the cycle of driver upgrades finally breaks. The driver you already own might be the best driver you ever had. It might just need the shaft it should have come with. Before you spend $1 on a new head, test these 3 profiles. The smart money, the golf-savvy money, is in the fitting bay, not the retail display. And the feeling of a matched shaft snapping through impact, the ball climbing on a line that surprises you, is worth more than any new paint job.